So yesterday Trump said something that he has never said before. I'm very disappointed with the conversation with Putin. It seems to me that Putin is simply no longer there. I don't see he wants to stop, and it's very bad. He doesn't want to end the war. Exactly, Donny. Putin is not looking to stop this war. And it seems like every voice in the media told Donald Trump that Putin is not going to stop. He wants the war to continue. But Donny didn't want to listen even his own favorite media, like for example Fox News. And now finally Donny starts to realize that those conversations with Russia, between him and Putin, between Davydov and Putin and some of the Russian representatives, everything of that simply doesn't work. So after today's conversation with President Zelensky, which went very well, Donny said about it, Zelensky said about it as well, I think that America will restore the military support of Ukraine. I mean, the supplies of those munitions, critical munitions, which were cut before. First of all, we are speaking about the air defense systems. Because as you say, it's the Kiev, the last night, the capital city of Ukraine was struck by many of the Shahid drones. As I told you, the main target was Zhulani airfield. However, Russia hit also many of the other districts of Kiev, including civilian areas. And here's unfortunately the price which Ukrainian people have to pay for very bad decisions done in the White House. And for Donny personally, for him to finally understand that it's useless to speak with Putin, after any sort of the conversation, Putin reinforces the strikes on Ukraine. It was happening before and it happened yesterday. By the time the conversation is over, the first drone went to Ukrainian territory, crossed the border. So I just hope that it's the final resolution of Donald Trump, that Putin is a very disappointed person, and the only way out for Donald Trump to keep his face, at least partially reputation, is to continue the military support of Ukraine with defense systems, because those are crucial. So potentially it could be a breaking change between Washington and Kiev, at least I hope on that. Otherwise, if Donny continue to call to Putin after what he said, that Putin is definitely not willing to negotiate, it would show that Donald Trump is not weak. No, he is just an empty space. And Putin is ruling everything. Guys, before I told you that it was a very bad idea for Donald Trump to communicate with Putin, and I was right, as well as many other experts who told the same thing. About the Shahid drones, well, Russia implemented new modifications. You may see the camera, which helps drone operator to receive the signal from the Shahid drone live, but the brief analysis already showed that those antennas may have the signal for not more than 300 kilometers. So either Russian drone operators are located very close to Ukrainian border, or there are some of the transmitting stations in Ukraine which are used by Russia. Action citing their sources in the White House say that Trump tells Zelensky he wants to help Ukraine with air defense. If it is implemented in real life, Ukraine may have more support and shut down many of the Shahid drones. But the main tool which Ukraine uses now against the Shahid drones are those small drones which fly very high. They may reach several of the kilometers of the altitude, and then they hit those Shahids. With the help of those drones, they act similar to FPV. Ukraine was capable to shut down 20% of the Shahids, and it is just a beginning. Because when I say 20% were shut down, it doesn't mean that 80% hit their targets. No, Ukraine has other systems to deal with Shahid drones. However, those are way more expensive compared to what we have here. And here I want to shout out to Sternenka and his volunteer fund, because they purchased lots of the FPV drones. They purchased those for the front lines. They purchased those also to strike Shahids and the Russian surveillance drones, which fly behind the front lines and usually spot very expensive Ukrainian equipment and vehicles. They also accumulate the funds for Ukrainian revenge program to send long-range drones to the Russian territory. Well, guys, as you may understand, everything of that costs money. All the spare parts, especially right now, then China tries to restrict the access for Ukraine to gain the drone parts. And yeah, most of the drone parts are still produced in China. And I guess that the fund of Sternenka was the first one which came out with initiative to shut down Shahid drones with the help of FPV. And now there are modernized FPV drones which are designed especially for those kind of the high altitude missions. And I'm gonna put the link for his channel. You may watch it with English subtitles. It is in Ukrainian. He has more than 2 million subscribers, so bigger channel than me here, but But you know, guys, we're actually doing a great job with you, and I cannot tell you lots of this stuff happening, unfortunately, maybe in the future. But from what I can tell, the fire truck is on the way to Ukraine. It was purchased, and now there is one more issue to pass it through Ukrainian border, and yeah, it will be done very soon. I'm gonna show you more pictures from the truck in Ukraine. And in general, guys, without volunteers, the job for Ukrainian defenders could be very, very terrible, and Ukraine would absolutely lost lots of the ground. But our guys are out there supported by Ukrainian people themselves. For example, Sternenko Fund was capable to accumulate, well, roughly 15 million hryvnias just for a single day after Shahid strike on Kiev, so they're purchasing those drones to intercept Shahids, which is a great initiative. Again, we have something new introduced into the drone wars. So it's one more way out of how Ukraine might cope without the defense systems provided by United States, and actually it was Pete Hegseth, we already know it. There was the information published today by many of the media sources that it was him, this guy on the screen, who blocked the Ukrainian military support. No real figures and audit was provided whether United States Army really in need of the Patriot systems. Yeah, before it was the info that there was his deputy who blocked this support, but now we have the other info, again from general media, I may say it like that it was Pete Hegseth. Fantastic news, my friends. Today there was one more exchange of the Ukrainian prisoners of war. Many of people came back to Ukraine, spending few years in the Russian prison in very terrible conditions, actually. I'm very happy for them, I'm very happy for their loved ones, and it's fantastic, as always, to receive those news. Absolutely great. Many people were just mentally and physically exhausted, and I already told you many times of how Russia behaves towards prisoners of war. My friends, a usual shout out to my patrons and the members who support the job that I do here almost every day. Thank you guys so much for maintaining my motivation. Without you, my work would not be possible, and if you guys want to support my job here, you're very welcome to join me on Patreon. The link for it I'll put in the video description just below. If you don't have the opportunity to support me there, just press your like to the video and also subscribe for the channel, because that is how you propel this video in YouTube algorithms. Thank you so much for it as well. But you know, guys, in Russia it's not calm also. This drone was flying really close to the building. They fly at the low altitude just not to be spotted by the Russian air defense. The only air defense system actually which Russia could use against those drones is the Panzer 1S. S-300 systems, those are long-range systems, they are useless against drones. Portable manpads, you may say, but there is no thermal trace from those kind of the drones. At least it's very, very weak, so the Soviet system Igla is not really effective. Those drones hit a very important infrastructure in Moscow Oblast, Sergeyev Posad. The facility was used to produce some of the crucial spare parts for the Shahid drones. We have the report about the strike from Ukrainian military with evidence provided by Russians themselves. It wasn't just a lonely strike for the recent time. Ukraine sent lots of the drones on Russia. Well, less than Russia sent on Ukraine, but still Ukraine tries to respond. Now I would say that sometimes those attempts are really successful. For example, this is Chuvashia region. Plus there is the chemical facility which was hit in Shebekino. You might remember this famous city or town, it's better to say. We have also information about the burning Russian convoy in Lipetsk Oblast of Russia. Definitely there are some of the military vehicles on fire. And here we have the photo after, just to confirm the information. There was the vehicle which was carrying infantry and the armored vehicle, some sort of the Russian MRAP, I think it's Akhmat vehicle MRAP, on the front. But actually it was just a car crash, it wasn't the Ukrainian drone strike, no. There was the big lorry, or you may say truck if you are from the United States, which hit the convoy of the Russian military. Judging on this wreckage, I would say that that lorry took several servicemen at least straight to hell. And this is the very fresh image. This is Chuvashia, and this is the Ukrainian drone which hit some sort of the storage. The storage is far away from Ukraine. Well, Russia also tries to strike Ukraine this night. They are mostly concentrated on the western side of Ukraine, Khmelnytsky Air Force Base, probably the place where Ukraine stores F-16s. Well, at least Russian military bloggers say like that. If it is true, so well, Ukraine has air defense systems, obviously, there. Ukraine knows about those drone strikes, so if F-16s were definitely based in Khmelnytsky, they were lifted off and displaced to different airfields. And now it's like that, just for you to understand. This is the map of Ukraine. Here you can probably see Crimea, and those arrows are registered Ukrainian drones flying towards Russian territory. I would say that response is big, but still less than Russia sends to Ukraine. The Wall Street Journal says that Moscow wants to use the current summer time to reinforce the strikes on the front lines and also against the Ukrainian cities. We witness it just right now how Russia sends their last reserves for the summer campaign, and I would say it's definitely the last chance for Russia to achieve something on the front lines. First of all, I'm speaking about those main cities of Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka. Definitely Russia has the chance to occupy them this year. But you know, it's already mid-July, so the summer campaign could be over in September, October. We'll see if Russia is successful with it. The source says the same stuff that I tell you guys. The main idea for Russia is to break the morale of the Ukrainian army and Ukrainians in general. That's why they continue to strike, for example, Kyiv city, which is the most populated one in Ukraine. They want to show that for civilians there is no option to live normally without those strikes in sovereign Ukraine. No, join Russia and strikes will stop. But we understand that in reality it's not like that. Just for information, Russia is building many of the prisons in the southern Ukraine occupied territories, also in the eastern Ukraine, 26 of the prisons. It is like the modern-day Gulag. And who will be sent to those prisons? Obviously, Ukrainians from the occupied territories. Those who do not accept the Russian identity, because Russia even cancels the Ukrainian language in the local schools. Ukrainian language for Ukrainians. It is crazy, guys. But if we speak about the long-term strategy, Putin has no chance for winning, obviously. Oh, good news, we almost forgot about the ex-defense minister of Ukraine, Reznikov, who was a defense minister even during the peace times before 2022. Well, I would say relatively peace times, because there was still a conflict in the eastern side of Ukraine. There was shooting without heavy casualties, but there was for long 8 years, so that's what Putin liked to say. So Reznikov was involved in some of the corruption schemes. I already told about it on my channel. And finally, investigation decided to take this case seriously. Yesterday, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau organized the search of his property. We are speaking about several of the apartments, and I think that this guy absolutely should be prosecuted, investigated, and brought to justice. Here you can see the training of the Russian Marines. Everything is normal, as usual. Should I comment on that, guys? They already said lots of the stuff about the Russian Crouch battalions. They continue to exist out there, and it is the modern-day phenomena of the Russian army, because no any army in the world would hire those soldiers for the active fights on the front lines. It is just useless, inhumane, but Russia does it. Okay, so there was some sort of the small air parade on 4th of July, the Independence Day of America. Guys, from the United States of America, my subscribers, my viewers, my followers, yeah, congratulations to you. Guys, as you may see, I say some of the bad stuff towards your president. I do it from my own perspective as Ukrainian who supports Ukraine. But I also see that your president is not doing good for your country as well. But if I do not like Donald Trump, it doesn't mean that I don't like America. USA is still a wonderful country with fantastic people living there, and I'm sure that majority of Americans, they do support democracy, because they started this democracy. Based on their example, we live in democratic world. Well, you may say there was also a French Revolution and so on. Yeah, maybe, but still, like, the big example is out there in USA, modern day example, that you can build society, businesses, economy, and everything will work. If there are no clowns, of course, in power, who might destroy everything. But I'm sure that it will not happen because institutions of USA, they're stronger than Donald Trump. So guys, again, happy 4th July, you deserve it, you're really awesome. And yeah, Donny again congratulated everyone. I didn't see this video before, so it's hard for me to comment. Oh, there he signed the big beautiful bill. Okay, we'll see what happens. After that BBB was signed, Elon Musk again put the voting. Independence Day is the perfect time to ask if you want independence from the two-party, some would say uniparty system. Should we create the America Party? I think he did this similar poll before, where 80% of people supported him, but now not that much. However, still the initiative is out there. I voted yes just to check out the result. But after all, I don't think that those plans have any sort of the perspectives, especially for Elon. Okay, so Europe indeed prepares for the possible war with Russia because there is no other enemy out there. There is the new initiative to boost the defense of Germany, which might cost 25 billion euros. Germany wants to produce more of the Leopard 2 tanks, which are very capable, as well as GTK Boxer vehicles. Well, here's the vehicle. It looks like Striker. You may put any sort of the module on top, so there could be a big cannon, machine gun, anti-aircraft cannon. It is also kind of the good infantry vehicle, so Germany decided to order almost 2,000 of those, so even more than 2,000. And Leopard tank, obviously you know it, the reinforced armor on A6 modification, enhanced electronic control and off-road capabilities, but they should put some of the grille on top because it is must-have for any sort of the tank nowadays. And guys, I will tell you more, the same amount of funds, I mean 25 billion euros at least, Germany will have to invest into the drone production. There is no other way. However, it's better to do it closer to the possible military conflict time, because if you invest those funds right now in nowadays drones, they could be old, very outdated in a few years. Drone technologies develop really fast. Speaking about FPV drones, Ukraine uses 5th generation already of FPV drones since the war had started. Drones is something that you need to produce while the war is ongoing. However, some of the surveillance drones could be produced even now. Oh guys, what we have here is the delusional representative of the Republican Party, sadly, in Congress, Republican Anna Paulina Luna. Zelensky banned the Orthodox Church. She is using the Donny-style caps lock here. I can promise there will be no weapons funding for you, Zelensky, President of Ukraine. Negotiate for peace. We're not your piggy bank. Well, the thing is that Ukraine didn't ban Orthodox Church, Zelensky especially. Ukraine is overwhelmingly Orthodox, so you cannot just ban those churches. What was done, even by the previous president of Ukraine, that the Ukrainian church officially was recognized by those priests. I'm not too much in religion, guys, but I know for sure that the Ukrainian church went through this procedure of the recognition. So Ukraine church has the same rights as the Moscow one. Before, in Ukraine, like the only recognized church by the summit of the Orthodox churches were only the Russian church, Moscow church. Now, Ukrainian as well. So the Russian church just lost its monopoly. That's it. The Christianity is everywhere out there in Ukraine. In most of the villages, you see temples, churches. Sometimes they belong even to this Moscow Patriarchy, sometimes to Ukrainian churches. Depends really. If locals want to go to Ukrainian church, they gather in a meeting and they say to the priest who is in the Moscow church, for example, that we want to go to Ukrainian church now, and that priest has two options: to leave or to join the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. That's it. It's up to democracy of those people who live there, nothing more. But why those sold Republicans actually blaming Ukraine for banning some sort of the Orthodox Church, and we may hear the same narratives coming from Tucker Carlson? Well, it's all coming from this very rich person, Vadim Novitsky, who was a Ukrainian oligarch and also the member of Ukrainian parliament, who later on escaped to Russia. And this is Metropolite Onufry, the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow's Patriarchy, and this is Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. So this is like the branch of the Russian Church, and Russia has huge influence, political influence, via the puppet church in Ukraine, because they have lots of the people still going to those churches. And there were the cases with lots of the pro-Russian priests who helped Russian soldiers by the time they invaded lots of the Ukrainian territories. For example, in Kiev Oblast, Chernigiv, Sumy, I know the story myself because I subscribe for the group in Buzova. Buzova is the place where the mother of my wife used to live. By the way, her house was totally kaputted. Well, their local priest of the Russian Moscow Patriarchy, he helped Russians. And again, all of the stuff is mostly coming from the Russian, I call them Orthodox oligarchs, who have some of the connections with the Russian churches as well as with the Russian political life and business of Russia. Obviously, here they don't pay taxes at all. So the guys like that, they send signals to American, even politicians, and they propel those kind of the narratives elsewhere. And here we have the response to the tweet of this Republican Anna Paulina Luna from the American volunteer who fights out there in Ukraine. Wonder if she knows that members of the church called in my location near the Svetohirsk Lavra and nearly cost me my life due to ensuring artillery strikes. Anna should stick to modeling. Obviously, Nate here says about the Moscow church, which could be dangerous because they may disclose the location of the Ukrainian army and send this information to Russians. That is what happened there. I would say even more that Russia has the most influence through their Orthodox Church in Ukraine, but it doesn't mean that Ukraine is blocking any sort of the church, including the Moscow one. Still, their temples, their churches, they're doing their stuff. They just lost their monopoly. That's it. And it's up to people to decide where they would like to go, to Moscow temples or to Ukrainian ones. And obviously you may understand that many people, they don't like everything connected to Moscow. Yeah, I think this topic is very wide, my friends, and I'll have to waste the entire video speaking about those churches. I'm Ukrainian myself, and I know how it works inside Ukraine. I don't know lots of the church stuff within, like their ranks and how they work inside, but I know how they work with the Ukrainian society, because I am the part of that society. Well, at least I was. About the front lines, guys, today we don't have any sort of the changes, which I think is the good news. And in any case, I'm gonna keep you updated on situation in Ukraine. And not only, now don't forget to press your huge like to this video. Plus, don't forget to subscribe, because by doing it, you help me a lot and you also help this channel. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are. Have a great time.